Hi everyone, here is summary of the happiness equation. Want nothing plus do anything equals have everything by Neil Pasricha. The happiness equation by Neil Pasricha explores the concept of happiness and provides practical strategies for achieving a more fulfilling life. The book challenges conventional wisdom about success and happiness, offering a fresh perspective on how to live a joyful existence. Pasricha begins by introducing his happiness equation. Want nothing plus do anything equals have everything. This equation forms the foundation of his philosophy, suggesting that true happiness comes from wanting less, being open to possibilities, and appreciating what we already have. Two economics professors and a dentist walk into a bar. This may sound like the opening line of a joke, but in the happiness equation, Neil Pasricha shares a snippet of a conversation between two economics professors and a dentist. They asked the dentist if he was happy in his profession, and he replied that dentistry made him miserable. So, why did he decide to become a dentist? He replied, "It's that stupid kid 18 years ago that chose to become a dentist. Not me." Perhaps you've asked yourself one of the following questions. Does money make us happy? Can we attach a value to a life event? Does having children make us more contented? What could make us permanently unhappy? Should governments try to increase their citizens' happiness, or should they continue to focus on economic prosperity? We think that understanding happiness, and making decisions that can bolster our happiness should be easy and logical. Yet, most of us can think back on disappointing choices, big or small, that we deeply regret. We believe that if we had made a different decision, we would be happier. We have this nagging feeling that there's a simple answer to being happy. We just haven't quite figured it out yet. This summary will briefly guide you through questions around happiness. We'll look at why many of us are like the dentist, and aren't too good at making decisions about what makes us happy. Pasricha updates us on the scientific debates around measuring happiness, and gives us valuable insights into our own happiness levels. Furthermore, we explore why it's important to be happy, and whether government involvement in promoting happiness could provide solutions. Neil Pasricha focuses on practical insights that anyone can apply to improve their happiness level. Specifically, the 9 secrets are organized into 3 parts of the happiness equation. Want nothing plus do anything equals have everything. 1.Be happy first. Pasricha argues that happiness leads to success, not the other way around. He encourages readers to prioritize their happiness and well-being, which in turn will lead to better performance and achievements in various aspects of life. Many of us are told that if we work hard, we'll be successful, and then we'll be happy. That's a flawed perspective. You'll end up chasing success endlessly, from better grades to the next promotion and a bigger house. On the other hand, if you're happy first, you'll feel great and become more productive. According to Harvard Business Review, happy people are 3x more creative, 31% more productive, and enjoy 37% higher sales. In another study, researchers also found that the happiest nuns, with a more positive attitude, lived on average 10 years longer than the least happy nuns. Research suggests that only 10% of our happiness is based on what happens to us, i.e., our life events and circumstances. The other 90% comes from our genetic predisposition and what we do intentionally to improve our happiness. Drawing on research in the field of positive psychology, Pasricha presents 7 ways to train your brain to be happy. To start feeling happier, just do any of these 7 things for 2 consecutive weeks. Take a brisk walk for 30 minutes, 3x a week. This activity was actually found to be more effective than medication in treating clinical depression. Take 20 minutes daily to write about a positive experience. This helps you to relive and remember the great moments and people in your life. Engage in 5 random acts of kindness each week. Get in flow, i.e., allow yourself to become fully absorbed in a challenging task that stretches your skills. After a period of engaged work, completely unplug yourself, e.g., turn off your phone and internet, so you can recharge. Meditate for 2 minutes daily. This helps to reduce stress and improve self-awareness, thus rewiring your brain for greater happiness. Gratitude. At the end of each week, write down 3 to 5 things you're grateful or proud of. 2.do it for you. The book emphasizes the importance of intrinsic motivation. Pasricha suggests that pursuing goals and activities for personal satisfaction rather than external rewards or recognition leads to greater happiness and fulfillment. 3. Remember the lottery. This secret reminds readers to maintain perspective and gratitude. Pasricha encourages us to appreciate the basic necessities and privileges we often take for granted, comparing our lives to those less fortunate. 4. Never retire. The author challenges the traditional concept of retirement, advocating for continuous engagement in meaningful activities throughout life. He argues that purpose and productivity are essential for long-term happiness and well-being. 5. Overvalue you. Pasricha emphasizes the importance of self-worth and self-compassion. He provides strategies for building self-esteem and reducing negative self-talk. 6. Create space. This secret focuses on the value of solitude and reflection. Pasricha encourages readers to create time and space for themselves to think, recharge, and reconnect with their inner selves. 7. Just do it. Inspired by Nike's slogan, this secret emphasizes the importance of taking action rather than overthinking. Pasricha provides strategies for overcoming procrastination and fear of failure. 8. Be you. The author stresses the importance of authenticity and staying true to oneself. He argues that embracing our unique qualities and values leads to greater happiness and fulfillment. 9. Don't take advice. Somewhat paradoxically, Pasricha concludes by encouraging readers to think critically about advice, including his own. He emphasizes the importance of finding what works for each individual rather than blindly following others' recommendations. Statistical dilemmas in studying happiness. Is happiness something that can be measured? In The Happiness Equation, Neil Pasricha delves into the complexities of studying happiness, highlighting several statistical dilemmas that researchers face. These dilemmas make it challenging to draw definitive conclusions about what truly makes people happy. Let's explore this topic in detail with real examples to illustrate these challenges. Statistical dilemmas in studying happiness. 1. Self-reporting bias. Example: imagine a survey where participants are asked to rate their happiness on a scale from 1 to 10. Some people might rate their happiness higher because they want to appear more positive or because they are influenced by societal expectations. Others might rate it lower due to a temporary bad mood or personal modesty. This self-reporting bias can skew the results, making it difficult to get an accurate measure of true happiness. 2. Cultural differences. Example: in some cultures, expressing happiness openly is encouraged, while in others, it might be seen as boastful or inappropriate. For instance, people in individualistic cultures like the United States might report higher levels of happiness compared to those in collectivist cultures like Japan, where modesty and humility are valued. These cultural differences can complicate cross-cultural comparisons of happiness. 3. Temporal variability. Example: happiness is not a static state, it fluctuates over time. A person might feel extremely happy after receiving good news but might feel less happy a few days later due to everyday stressors. Longitudinal studies that track happiness over time can provide more accurate insights, but they are also more complex and resource-intensive to conduct. 4. Subjective nature of happiness. Example: happiness is a deeply personal and subjective experience. What makes one person happy might not have the same effect on another. For instance, some people find happiness in social interactions, while others find it in solitude. This subjectivity makes it challenging to create a one-size-fits-all measure of happiness. 5. Confounding variables. Example: many factors can influence happiness, such as health, income, relationships, and personality traits. These confounding variables can make it difficult to isolate the effect of a single factor on happiness. For example, a study might find a correlation between income and happiness, but this relationship could be influenced by other factors like job satisfaction or social status. Real-life example, the Nun study. One of the most famous studies on happiness is the Nun study, which examined the lives of nuns in the United States to understand the factors that contribute to longevity and happiness. Researchers found that nuns who expressed more positive emotions in their early autobiographies lived longer and reported higher levels of happiness later in life. However, this study also faced several statistical dilemmas. Self-reporting bias. The nuns' autobiographies were subjective accounts of their lives, which could have been influenced by their desire to present themselves in a positive light. Cultural and environmental factors. The nuns lived in a relatively homogeneous environment with similar lifestyles, which might not be representative of the general population. Temporal variability. The study spanned several decades, during which the nuns' happiness levels could have fluctuated due to various life events and changes in their environment. Despite these challenges, the Nun study provided valuable insights into the relationship between positive emotions and longevity, highlighting the importance of considering statistical dilemmas when studying happiness. Understanding these statistical dilemmas helps us appreciate the complexity of studying happiness and the need for careful interpretation of research findings. By acknowledging these challenges, researchers can develop more robust methods to study happiness and provide more accurate insights into what truly makes us happy. Looking internally. Professor of psychology at the University of Wisconsin, Richard Davidson, used MRI scans to analyze our brains when we experience certain feelings. He found that people whose left side of the brain showed more significant activity, reported more positive emotions than the more active, right-siders. Those with greater, right-side activity, reported more negative feelings and tended to be rated as unhappy by others who knew them. This finding suggests that our individual neurology plays a decisive role in our happiness. A longitudinal study by an American professor of neurology, David Snowden, also supports this. Snowden's research involved nuns, which was particularly useful because of their very similar life situations. These similarities make it easier to rule out variables that may complicate the cause and effect notion. Analyzing the tone, content, and language in the nuns' diaries allowed Snowden to divide them into two groups: A, the happy and not so happy. Of the not so happy nuns, only 40% lived to 85 years of age. However, a startling 90% of the happy nuns lived past their 85th birthdays. The conclusion? Happy people live longer. Additional research also shows that happier people heal more quickly from physical injuries. Then there's the matter of our personalities. Personality is at the core of our inner being. Researchers found that individuals who are extroverted, agreeable, conscientious, and open to experience are more likely to report high levels of life satisfaction. The opposite also applies. Those who fall into the neuroticism category, i.e., those who are more angry, anxious, and self-conscious, report greater unhappiness, even when external factors are reasonably constant. Ultimately, happiness is both input and output. A longitudinal study by psychologist Ed Diener indicates a link between students' positive mood and later earnings. Happy people are also more inclined to pro-social behavior. We also know that happiness correlates with longevity. So it seems like happiness can lead to success, but that success also leads to increased happiness. From a statistical perspective, we have to understand that causality can run in both directions. Then there are all the external events of our lives. Biology isn't everything when it comes to happiness. Our circumstances also play a significant role, and money features strongly in how we view our lives. Do you think you'd be happier if you had more money? Our instinctive answer, irrespective of culture, would be an unequivocal yes. Richard Oesterlen's research dating back to the 1970s challenged this view. His initial findings were unsurprising. In many countries, rich people reported being much happier than poor people. However, then the expectation is that an increase in income for citizens should lead to a happier society. This assumption sounds reasonable, right? Well, not quite. Oesterlin found that, despite the United States having continued economic growth since the Second World War, national happiness did not rise accordingly. So the rich are happier than the poor, but an increase in income for everyone doesn't increase happiness for everyone. Powdthavy believes that the explanation for this is that everything is relative. We desire money for two reasons. The first is that we need it to survive, but the second is that we enjoy increasing our social status. That's why many people aspire to drive an Aston Martin instead of an Austin Maestro. Research from Spanish economist Ada Ferrari-Carbonell shows that we compare ourselves to those with similar socio-demographic characteristics. In other words, we want to keep up with the Joneses. If we earn more than those who share our community, our happiness increases. However, if the income increases are identical for everyone in our community, no one becomes happier. In China, for instance, researchers found that approximately 70% of rural Chinese compare themselves to those living in the same village. However, only 11% compared themselves to people living outside of their village. So we tend to compare ourselves to those we mix with, and if we perceive ourselves as having more than those around us, our happiness increases. If people see others advance economically in a country undergoing demographic shifts, they see it as an indication of what the future might be like for them too. However, the problem is that if there are no shifts in a short period, their hope may turn into frustration, reducing their happiness. So a more precise understanding of money might be that we care a lot about our relative income. The fact is that we pay attention to rankings, so both absolute and relative income matter. What helps us recover from bad experiences? An interesting question is whether we eventually adapt to adverse life circumstances, and if specific amounts of money can compensate for this. Setpoint theory indicates that we eventually revert to previous levels of happiness after a challenging life event. However, the counter-argument is that cross-sectional research that's based on comparing different people's happiness at the same point in time makes true cause and effect challenging to determine. It's a lot easier to extrapolate causal relationships if we evaluate the same individual's reported happiness over a long period, both before and after specific positive or negative life experiences. Findings show that unemployment hurts individuals psychologically. What's more is that hurt seems to continue, particularly for men. Psychological recovery after losing a job was not complete even after 5 years without work. Another statistical problem is that findings often include the word average, but as we know, not all of us are average. For example, unemployment affects men more negatively than women, and it affects highly educated men more than those with lower education. The economist Andrew Clark hypothesizes that unemployment is easier to handle when your area's unemployment rate is high. He further argues that the gap between the happiness of the employed versus the unemployed's happiness could disappear entirely if the overall unemployment rate in the region were over 24%. This is a social norm effect, and social norms affect our happiness. What about divorce? At the cross-section, that is when the event occurs, separated and divorced people are significantly unhappier than their married counterparts. However, for people going through a divorce, their life satisfaction actually declines before the divorce is finalized. This unhappiness begins about 4 years prior for men, and 2 years for women. However, unlike some social conditions such as unemployment, adaptation can be complete reasonably soon after the breakup. Why would our adaptation vary in these different life contexts? Our author cites psychologists Dan Gilbert and Timothy Wilson. They suggest that we begin to adapt to an event when our attention is drawn away from it, and we think less about it. So time may heal wounds if the past event isn't continually demanding our attention. Unemployment, disability, and lengthy commutes affect our minute-by-minute experience. The lesson is that happiness is a state of mind. Yes, we all have a particular genetic and personality wiring, but where we focus our attention daily also determines how we adapt to changes in our lives. The importance of social relationships. Marriage is one of the most significant social connections. In terms of marriage, we're happier in the years leading up to the wedding, which peaks when the ceremony takes place. However, this joy seems to diminish after about 2 years of wedded bliss. Findings also indicate that newly wedded people are happier than single folk. There's a range of other social relationships that are important. These include seeing friends and relatives who may live elsewhere, and talking to neighbors. People who see friends or relatives almost every day for a year are happier than those who hardly see friends or relatives. And people who talk to neighbors nearly every day for a year are happier than those with few interactions. Behavioral economists are experimenting with calculations that quantify the amounts of money that would compensate for these situations. For example, someone who doesn't talk to anyone in the neighborhood would need to be paid the equivalent of about $2,950 per annum to be just as satisfied as their more sociable counterparts, as per 2011 calculations. Does having a child make you happier? The debate as to whether or not having a child makes you a happier person caused a lot of contention when our author made his findings public. There's evidence that having a child does not increase parents' happiness, and having a child lowers parents' marital satisfaction in the first 5 years of the child's life. This is how Vorldrevolution explains this. We generally believe that having children will make us happy. Our author points out that even if this is a faulty belief, the value of intergenerational transmission is essential because it makes evolutionary sense. We also want to appear socially desirable, therefore, we may overreport the parental experience's positivity. However, there may be a further reason for these results. Again, it could be where we focus our attention. That cute smile that we receive from a baby evokes strong responses of delight, but may be a less frequent experience than the daily anxieties of raising children. We worry about our children, and these small but negative emotions take up most of our attention. And this is what might be showing up in our levels of self-reported happiness. While children may not give us moment-to-moment happiness, they build our sense of meaning and self-worth. Vorldrevolution emphasizes that there are many dimensions of subjective well-being. It's not just positive emotion, it's also about meaningful experiences. It may be better to live meaningfully than to just focus on hedonic happiness. Conclusion. Neil Pasricha brings together the insights and lessons from the entire book to emphasize a powerful message: happiness is not a destination but a journey that involves daily choices and mindset shifts. He reiterates that happiness is accessible to everyone, regardless of their circumstances, and provides practical steps to achieve it. Real-life example: Pasricha's personal journey. Neil Pasricha's own life serves as a compelling example of the principles he discusses in the book. Before writing The Happiness Equation, Pasricha experienced significant personal and professional challenges. He was working in a high-stress corporate job, and his marriage was falling apart. Despite outward appearances of success, he felt deeply unhappy. Pasricha decided to make a change by focusing on what truly made him happy. He started a blog called 1000 Awesome Things, where he documented simple, everyday joys. This project, driven by intrinsic motivation, not only brought him personal happiness but also resonated with millions of readers worldwide. The blog's success led to a book deal and a new career path that aligned with his passions. By prioritizing happiness and making intentional choices, Pasricha transformed his life. His journey illustrates the book's core message: happiness is a choice that requires daily effort and a shift in perspective. Final thoughts. In the conclusion, Pasricha leaves readers with a sense of empowerment. He emphasizes that happiness is within reach for everyone and that small, intentional actions can lead to significant changes. By applying the principles outlined in the book, readers can create a happier, more fulfilling life. Pasricha's conclusion is a call to action, encouraging readers to take control of their happiness and to start making positive changes today. His personal story and practical advice provide a roadmap for anyone seeking to improve their well-being and find true happiness.